Welcome to the 2019-20 boundary cycle of the Advisory Boundary Committee. I am Jason Link, Manager, School Enrollment and Demographics. How about before we start, if we want to go around the table, talk so close to this thing. Mark will get mad. If we want to go around the table and do some introductions, your name.
I think Frank said he wanted to start.
Frank, volunteering for him.
Frank is
Yeah, just met him, and already he started.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you want to state your name, who appointed you. If you forgot, don't worry. I have who appointed you right here. I have the cheat sheet. I'll bail you out. I'll bail you out.
You're so kind.
And if you'd like to say a little bit about yourself, optional, but feel free.
I'll pass on that last part. My name is Frank Hayden, and I'm appointed by the NAACP.
Hi there, my name is Kathy Salvador. I was appointed by Barbara McQuinn for the North area.
Good evening, Nellie Titcomb. I'm appointed by Board Chair Shaw, and I reside in the city of Atlantis.
Hi, everybody. Andy Thompson. I reside in the city of Boca Raton, and I was appointed by Frank Barbieri.
My name is Angela Santa Cruz. I represent the school district. I work in the Planning and Intergovernmental Relations Department.
Shane Searchwell, Director of Transportation.
Nancy Gribble, appointed by School Board Member Erica Whitfield.
Virginia Ferris, reside in Lake Clark Shores and appointed by the superintendent.
I'm Cynthia Beckton. I was appointed by the superintendent, right?
Correct.
That's what happens when you've been through several of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to double check. And I live in Riviera Beach, and I just have a very important, where's the umbrella, Frank? What's going on here?
It's early, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
we'll tell you about that in a little bit. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Roseanne Brown. I live in Riviera Beach. I'm appointed by Board Member Dr. Deborah Robinson.
Good evening. Carla Donaldson, appointed by the ESC Advisory Council, and I live in Wellington.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Levin. I also live in Wellington, and I was appointed by cheat sheet.
I believe you were appointed by Ms. Andrews.
I was
Board Member
appointed
Marsha Andrews.
We won't tell her you forgot.
Thank you.
Just confirm that is correct. So.
Thank you so much.
Okay, nice to see everyone again. Nice to see our new members. Welcome. So we'll start with the next item, which is approval of the November 9th, 2017 minutes. Some of you recall this was attempted during the March 15th, 2018 meeting, but due to a lack of quorum, we were unable to approve those minutes. If you recall, that was when we discussed the revision to the policies.
So we're supposed to remember a year ago, November 9th.
Well, I did attach the minutes to spark the memory, to help you out there, but hopefully you're able to read those over. I can put them up on the screen. Find it myself. So if there was any questions or any recommended changes.
Motion to approve is written.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Second by Roseanne. And all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are approved. All right, now we'll move to election of the chair. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to elect Cynthia Beckton as chair.
Me too.
I second the motion.
Third, fourth, fifth.
I close the nominations.
Motion by Nancy
I
Gribble
support
to
that.
elect Cynthia Beckton as chair, seconded by Carla Donaldson. We have a motion and a second to elect Cynthia Beckton as chairperson of the Advisory Boundary Committee for the 2019-20 boundary cycle. All in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed?
And you better not say nothing. Oh, I'm sorry.
All opposed, Cynthia.
Seeing none, the motion is carried. Congratulations, Madam Chair.
Our condolences. Good evening, everyone. It is a very interactive committee. For those of you who may think it's dictatorial, please understand that it is not. And you will see that very, 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 very shortly. With that, the floor is now open for an election of a vice chair.
Madam Chairman, I nominate Virginia Faraci for vice chair.
Second.
There's a nomination of Virginia, seconded by Nancy, seconded by Roseanne.
Closed.
Any discussion? Okay, having seen that we're in an acquiesce mode tonight, all in favor of that motion, would you say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, again, you will see that even though we've moved swiftly on this, it is an interactive committee. With that, Jason, you're on.
Okay, and just once again, I just want to remind anyone out there that would like to speak on any of the agenda items today that we have speaker cards at the front table. Please fill out a speaker card, bring them to the front of the table, and we'll be sure to call you up when we reach the public comment portion of the meeting. All right, we will now review the district's official benchmark enrollment report, which is known as the October FTE, which stands for Full-Time Equivalency Enrollment Report. These are the figures that were sent to the state as each school-by-school enrollment, and these are the figures that populated into the enrollment projection to come up with the next 5-year enrollment projection, the 1-year projection for the budget, and what we use to assess, verify enrollment for this year, and then move forward with any potential solutions for overcrowded schools for any relief needed. So let's open the report. So we've got a total of pre-K through 12, 196,335 students, which is an increase of almost 1,000 students, almost 0.5%. The K-12 figure, 192, 131. Looking at our traditional district schools, all the levels experienced an increase. Elementary, very slight increase. Middle experienced the largest increase, and high school experienced a decline of 340 students for a net gain of 535 students, a 0.3% increase over last year, 172,335. We're currently at 172,870. Charter schools, if you recall last year, charter schools experienced a decline of almost 800 students. This year was a very small decline of 253 students, but looking at the last 3 years in totality, the charter school enrollment averaging the 3 years would have experienced a net decline over the last 3 years.
But that looks like an increase.
Right, that's what
Well, if you look at the last 3 years,
Oh, I'm looking at
yeah, I mean,
what
if you
gave
look
us.
at the from 16, 17, then to 2018, if you do the math, the 330, the plus 330, and minus 779, the plus 253, it actually ends up being a negative figure. Different ways to look at it.
Okay. You say so.
I was going to ask why
It's
the
that
increase
new
over
math they're
last
doing
year.
in
Yeah.
school.
Why the increase over last year? Was there a new charter school that opened? Or?
There's many ways to look at numbers. Yeah, well, there was we had one closure, that was Eagle Arts Academy, and we had one new charter school opening, and that was SLAM, Sports Leadership Academy Management in Boca Raton. Yes. So we had one opening and one closure. So there wasn't because, we had 5 new charter schools open or 2 closures, but it was an even.
And do your figures
swap.
give per charter school?
Yeah, if they're tiny.
Are they in here?
They're right
Yes.
here. Yes.
They're tiny.
I'm sorry, Jason.
It's
You know
very
I love
tight.
numbers. They're my friends. But I didn't get that. Can you go back over the charter school number?
New math.
Yes.
It's up to 53.
So last year charter schools enrolled 20,084 students. This year they're up 253 students. What I was saying, I was looking at a 3-year trend. We tend to look at 3-year trends. for traditional schools, charter schools. So, I mean, you just run the math, the 330 minus 779 plus 253, that's the net loss of 196 over a 3-year period. That's what I was getting at. I mean, if you go further out than 3 years, you're going to have a net increase. But we tend to look at 3 years as, I mean, that's what my projection model looks at, the last 3 years when I'm projecting enrollment out 5 years. Because once you start going beyond that, you're losing the relevance of those, those out years. 2013 isn't as relevant running a recent enrollment projection as 2017 to 2019.
But it would be fair to say that over the years, charter schools have increased. There's more charter schools since 2009.
Oh, absolutely. From you look at 2010, in totality, yes. We've gained. I mean, charter schools make up about enrollment about 10% of the district's total enrollment, about a little over 20,000 total students. But of late, that could be due to saturation and some other reasons. But you can see, look at these numbers: 4,000, 3,100, 1,300, and then you drop to 330, and then you had a net decrease of 779 and a very small increase of 253. So the increase isn't there. What currently as what it used to be is what I'm alluding to. It's flattened, plateaued. Now, in terms of traditional district schools, this is K-12. It doesn't include pre-K. You can see we were increasing ever since 2010, 1.2, a little over a percentage, 1.8, almost hitting 2% year-to-year increase. And then it's the last 2 years, still an increase, but the rate of increase has stemmed over the last 2 years. 0.5% last year, and this year a little under 0.5%. So rather see an increase than a decrease, but that rate of increase has slowed. So we'll investigate as to the reasons why. That has occurred statewide. The state's projection was also, we actually projected lower than the state. The state had us growing at a higher rate. So we'll take a look at the reasons why, and use that as part of our analysis when we project next year and the next 5 years. But as you can see, that was a 701 increase K-12 for traditional district schools. Oh, I'm sorry, this is all schools, isn't it?
This is all K-12.
Yeah, this is all K-12. So this includes everything. My correction. This is all schools. So this is all students, alternative ed, charter schools. Traditional district schools would actually make up the bulk of the enrollment, of course, but I stand corrected. This is all schools. So this is district-wide, all schools. I don't think we just have the traditional trend in this report, but that was all schools. So district-wide, still growth, but not as high as it was. So we're pushing 200,000 students. What next is, here's another big sort of my report card I'd like to review each year. This is actual versus projected enrollment. As I've mentioned in prior years, really a solid projection is being within a percentage point of actual enrollment. So that's my goal, is to be within a percent. So you can see with our traditional schools, I was within 0.77% was, so I projected about 1,300 students more than actually came in. And district-wide was about 0.7%. So we were under the percentage. It was about 1,351 over projection. So we were anticipating more students, but again, within that 1 percentage point, which is the goal. And you can see the middle school enrollment was almost, that was actually within a middle school classroom. Just 24 students. So
that would qualify for a recount.
No, right. Good timing.
Manual recount by hand. Yeah.
That's right. Good timing on that
Jason,
one.
for the traditional district schools, the elementary, that also includes the pre-Ks?
No, that's just K-12. Yeah, it states in the header. It's just K-12. Because pre-K students really, in essence, can attend school anywhere. They don't have a zone school. So parents, a lot of them choose the private pre-K. Some don't choose pre-K at all. Some, you don't have to attend pre-K. Many times your zone school, they don't have pre-K. So it's really the K-12. That's really what I mean, I project in the 5-year projection, but for the purposes of looking at boundary changes, pre-K, and we can move pre-K programs, so there's more flexibility with pre-K. So this is K-12. So it's a little bit less elementary than we anticipated, again, the high school, and that reflect we weren't anticipating a decrease in high school. So not only, which explains, why the 845, over projection in the high school. So I just prepared a brief PowerPoint going through some of the more overcrowded schools to just let you know what those schools are and what we're looking potential relief options for those schools.
I may ask you a question, please,
Sure.
before you move. Has the north area traditionally had fewer students than the other than the Glades, than the other two?
Well, with the realignment, if you recall, we used to have areas. We used to have 5 areas,
Right.
and then they realigned the administrative areas. It used to be Area 1. It used to be, I think, South, Central, however it was, right. And then it became 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
And then it was just broken down then into 4 regions. So, but the way the schools were shifted, yes. Now North typically has had fewer students than Central or South. South tends to be the largest region, with Central second, North third, and Glades having the fewest students.
Because there's a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, North, 43,000, it's almost 20,000 additional students. South.
Is that indicative of the trend of northward migration, population density, kids per household?
The schools are grouped. I think that's more of an administrative realignment. It's not really a geographic. I mean, our leadership determines what schools are in what region. So they align those schools based on that determination. It typically aligns with geography. I know, for instance, you've got Lake Worth. I know Lake Worth High and Lake Worth Middle are in actually 2 separate regions. One's in Central, one's in South.
Yeah.
So for whatever, that administrative rationale is, that's a leadership decision, how the schools are allocated to each particular region.
Well, then just 2 years ago, they actually, after the school year started, they shifted a couple of schools from Central to North.
Yeah.
To try to balance out a little bit. But
Sure. I think they assess that each year. Leadership assesses that each year, and then as is deemed necessary, they'll shift schools to other regions if that's a determination.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, does that affect the resources to the schools?
No, because resources are based on enrollment, so it's really predicated on enrollment. That doesn't affect the resources. I mean, what we send to this information isn't sent to the state. This is just for our own administrative purposes, for those regional superintendents to have a certain number of schools under them, the instructional superintendents to have a certain number of schools under them, and those are allocated and assessed and allocated annually. But that wouldn't have an impact on funding.
Okay.
Is there a trend in where there was a lower number of students than anticipated as to what area? Are they all concentrated, like the 845 high school students that didn't show up? Or is it just spread out all over the place?
I think it's spread out. That's still an analysis I'll have to run when I get into the projections to see exactly, I'll start to look at regional trends, county, subsections, subregions of the county, see exactly, if that is the case, if certain areas of the county experience larger declines than other regions, or if it was just spread out. It's just a statewide trend that we're just, overall less. Some schools experience an increase, some decrease. So, but that's something I will definitely analyze when I run through the projection process.
I think that's it.
Okay. I'll run through the PowerPoint briefly.
Before you move on, Jason, we did get a lot of information, and in terms of backup, yes, it's very tiny. So I suggest that y'all get magnifying glasses.
I know the numbers are small. If it's printed on 8.5 by 11 paper, I know it's small.
Yeah, it's
We
small.
we can send you little magnifying glasses
Oh, okay.
as an attachment.
That's an
Hanging
attachment.
from the ID.
Okay.
I hear you. Yeah, the numbers are small. Well, maybe we can print out that report on ledger paper or something for the meeting so they're easier to read.
The numbers are small and the eyes are old.
It's easier to read on the PDF, on the digital document, because you can zoom in, but in front of you, it's small.
Yeah, it is. It's small.
I hear you.
Okay.
I have my glasses on, so usually I get it in.
So you are going to,
Okay, so these are some of the more overcrowded schools. If you examine the report, these are some of the schools that overcapacity, and here are some of the relief solutions that we're exploring. So we've got Verde Elementary, currently at 120% fish utilization. That's our most overcrowded, aside from the conservatory school, but that's a unique situation. They're a full choice 6-8 component, and they're not in that, they're not as crowded on, is what it shows on paper. But Verde is really the most overcrowded elementary school in the district at 120. They do have 4 wooden relocatables that are not included as fish, so they are using those as classrooms. So what are we doing for Verde? They currently have a modernization planned to begin in SY 1920. So there's currently, there's a plan in place to move those kids to a temporary site, most likely somewhere around the Don Estridge Middle School campus, while we completely demo and rebuild that school new. So what are we going to do with the school? It's going to become, we anticipate the capacity to be about 1,400, and it's going to be the first K-8 in the Boca Raton area. So that's going to be a K-8, and the dual purpose of that is to help relieve overcrowded Boca Raton Middle. So that we anticipate, it's not definitive, but we anticipate the 6-8 component being 100% choice. So that's where we are with Verde. The modernization's funded, it's in the capital plan, and that's the plan for Verde.
go on, Virginia, because
I'm just trying to remember whether that was the school where they're buying some extra property in order to make room for that school, or is that a different school?
That was Addison
I know we
Meisner.
had it at Cork
Yeah.
before, but I can't remember.
That was Addison Meisner, yeah.
Okay.
That's another school. They're not in as a crowded situation, but that's another school being modernized. But we were looking at various potential sites for Addison Meisner. We ended up going with the current site, but buying up some additional parcels around the site to be able to expand it at the capacity that we really felt would benefit.
So this site has enough to expand to a K-8?
Verde is a huge site, yes. It's a huge site, so we can expand it to a K-8. It's a large site.
Okay.
The challenge right now is moving the students while that construction takes place, and that's what leadership is currently working on. Now that site, that was part of the, and I'll also get into that. As you can see, additional relief anticipated from new elementary school 05C, which some of you may have read. We're still currently awaiting Florida Department of Education approval. We apply for 3 new schools throughout the district. 05C, the city of Boca Raton was very generous to donate us a piece of land right adjacent to Don Estridge Middle School. The initial hope was to build 05C first, then house the Verde students, then house the Addison students, then set boundaries for the new school. But due to our the delay, the delay process for the approval from DOE, we evidently can't build the school yet because we haven't received approval. So we're looking to do a temporary school site using modular relocatable classrooms. We've done that previously, I think with Everglades. We may have done something like that with H.L. Johnson. I don't recall if this may have been right as I arrived with the district, but we've done that previously.
It was at Landings.
We may have, yeah, I know we've done it previously. I think it was right before I arrived at the district, but that's the current plan as to where on the Don Estridge site that's currently being worked on.
Spare me from looking at the tiny numbers and tell me what the capacity is right now. I mean, how many students are there? It's 120% over, but what is the,
11:13.
thank you.
Thank you, you
So,
beat me to it.
Jason, with it being 11:13, and with the district waiting from DOE about the 05C school.
Right.
How did they get to new capacity of 1,400?
That's the anticipated new capacity when Verde's, the modernization is complete. So it's going to go from its current fish of 926 to an anticipated fish capacity, that's another term for capacity, Florida inventory of schoolhouses, to an anticipated capacity of 1,400. It may fluctuate a little bit, but that's to relieve Verde on its K-5 component and then to accommodate the 6-8 component.
So we're going to have a fish that is just over the current capacity, but also add 3 grade levels?
300.
That's what it sounds like.
Yes.
2.
Again,
That
this,
makes sense.
this is with the anticipation, 05C will also be a relief. That's why additional relief anticipated from 05C. So we're really, if that doesn't come through, we're going to have to look at other options. But that's the plan, that we build Verde big enough to accommodate its current students and a middle school component, and then we'll have a brand new school. Hopefully we'll have a brand new school to further, if needed, offload students out of the Verde zone into the new 05C zone.
And you characterized modernization as demolition, new construction?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you modernize my house?
Okay. Jason, before,
look into it.
in terms of moving to 05C, the study, dealing with where everything is right now with Verity and trying to bypass the boundary committee. And that's where, I always want to bring it back to, do we have to deal with anything here? And let me, before you answer, because we get on this track, a lot of times we get caught up in it and we shouldn't be, so let's make sure that we're not there. Okay, so with the plan from leadership right now is to move students around. Has there been a decision made about the particular grades, how all of this movement is going to occur? And, exactly what is this plan that would, in essence, leave ABC out?
Right, because it's not really a boundary to the Verde zone will remain intact. We just need to temporarily move the students to a temporary site while their new school, pretty much a new school, their school is being modernized and rebuilt. So the zone's staying the same, we're not changing zones, so there wouldn't be a need to involve the ABC in any sort of boundary because we're not changing boundaries. We just need to temporarily move the students out of that pretty much construction site in a temporarily, and that's all being worked on, how that will work, the logistics, where, all the programmatic functionings of that site, that's all currently being worked on.
Just want to check,
Yes.
Jason, because
No.
I have
That's a good
flashbacks
question.
to Gove Elementary. You have a tendency to do these things.
Right, no, so that temporary holding school would not come to the ABC.
Okay, all right.
So then it really doesn't come to us until the 05C is approved, if ever.
Hopefully approved. If it is approved, we're still at the big if, hopefully, yes, then when,
It would be
if
that.
we're hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, 05C is approved, then that school's constructed, ready to open, then that would come to this committee to reset boundaries, offload students likely from Verde, Colusa, J.C. Mitchell, maybe some other school, fill the school, and then
Whatever.
take it from there.
The reason the state hasn't approved the school is because they're saying there's enough capacity. Where is that capacity hiding?
West Palm.
The state was looking at the county
As a whole?
totality. So they were looking at Delray Beach,
Yeah.
Lantana, West Palm Beach. So staff from DOE came down. We met with them for an extended period of time for 2 straight days, and tried to explain some of those points. That this Palm Beach County is larger than the state of Delaware and Rhode Island. It's a huge county. So especially at the elementary school levels. Elementary schools tend to be more community-based.
Neighborhood.
The zones are really, they're community-based schools. I mean, they surround much smaller communities, much smaller neighborhoods than a high school, of course, which is a much larger zone. So we try to relay that, busing kids to West Palm Beach from Boca Raton is not the best path.
And
Palm
the
Beach County.
alternative is to keep shifting.
Well,
Shift everybody.
we hope we don't reach that point, but that's what
the
we relay
alternative.
to DOE in the hopes that they, come back with a favorable decision.
Who has a point?
Good.
You're on.
Thank you,
Yes,
Madam
sir.
Chair. And the question I had is it relates to O5C. When it comes before this committee, that'll happen not only after O5C is approved and built, but after the Addison Meisner kids get moved in, if and when they do, and after the Verde kids get moved in, and then back at their school. And only at that point would there need to be boundaries redrawn, because then at that point, O5C would be open for business.
Correct.
So to speak.
Right. So it's
Kind of, sort of.
Verde first, so that temporary holding school, likely at the Don Estridge site, will be, the Verde kids will move there. We anticipate the school being completed, the modernization 2021. Then immediately following in that next school year, the Addison Meisner students will use that same space. So we're going to reuse that same temporary space for the Addison Meisner students for 1 year. That's the plan. And then Addison Meisner rebuild, hopefully opening for 21, 22. And then by then, we hopefully will have an answer regarding O5C. And then at that point, we would, if it's an affirmative, then we begin construction on O5C. And then it comes to the ABC.
I think I'm good. So the school will be, the K through 8 will be opened in school year 2021.
That's the current
Goal.
that's the current hope, anticipation, goal, yes.
Okay. And just because I'm not familiar with the area, how far is Don Estridge from Verde, where they plan to house the students?
2 miles up the street, it's not that far.
Yeah, a couple
Yeah,
miles.
so I just understand that a lot of these communities are very compact, and being that, just as a personal point of preference,
Oh, yes.
that this is going to be the first K through 8 school, it will be clamored after, and I foresee us looking at this boundary once the school is open, because they are very tight, populated communities, and they are going to be a lot of kids that want to go there, even though you're building. We've often seen when we build a new school, not many people want to go there. So
And they have strong opinions down there, too.
I
God,
think we've heard a
really?
few of them on occasion.
And I foresee the 6-8 component being very popular.
Yes.
Especially if a choice option, I can almost guarantee you'll have more applicants than
Yeah.
Okay.
seats, but
Yeah.
that's my opinion. All right, we'll move on.
Thank you so much,
Yep.
yes.
We'll continue on with the presentation. And then there's Highland Elementary, who is next, 114% fish utilization, and this proposed boundary change, which I'll discuss following this piece. And then we've got Colusa at 111 of available utilization. If you recall, we were here, I want to say now it's been 3 years ago.
Yeah,
It was about,
seems like we just did.
yeah, and I mentioned at the time that was not going to be a permanent, my projection forecasted the increase. So 111% at Colusa, that's available. That's counting their concretables. They do have 3 wooden relocatables not included and available that they're utilizing. There could be some potential relief when Verde the modernization is complete for a small boundary shift. We'll see when we arrive at that point. But the primary relief is anticipated from a new elementary school, O5C, as the school is actually located in the Colusa zone. So that will be Colusa's primary relief valve. Look, if there are delays in Colusa's utilization continues to grow, we'll have to look at other potential temporary options, to not allow them to reach 120% before the permanent solution comes. So we're keeping an eye on that school and assessing annually. Okay, and then South Grade is at 108 of available. Again, they're over 110 of their fish. And they are also included in this upcoming study that we'll discuss for a proposed boundary change. We'll move on to middle schools. There's just one. That's Boca Raton Community Middle, currently at 109% fish utilization. As I mentioned, the primary relief will anticipated to come from Verde and Addison Meisner, shifting to a K-8 grade configuration following completion of their modernizations. So we're continuing to limit out-of-boundary enrollment at that school. as best as possible, working with the school on address verification efforts. So we did really keep that school. I think they actually experienced a tiny decrease with those efforts just to try to keep them flat, or, having them increase further than that 109. So that's the anticipated relief valve of those, the two elementary schools.
Except you said the middle school option will be a choice.
Right.
And that doesn't mean they're all going to come from Boca Raton Middle.
We'll work, the zones are for Boca, the majority of the zones for Colusa and Verity is Boca Raton Middle. So we'll work with the choice department to assess how that eventually will work with the choice seats. There may be priority SACs. There may be a SAC, if you live in a Boca Raton Middle SAC, we may draw priority SACs to ensure that we're providing Boca Raton Middle the appropriate relief. So that'll be something in coordination with choice, as it's likely, again, it's not official, but likely those will be, that'll be a choice option.
In some cases, you've called out fish utilization, and in some slides you've called out available utilization. What makes you use the different columns?
Yeah, for our new members especially, thanks for pointing that out. So fish that's set by the state. That's Florida Inventory of Schoolhouses. That's what the state deems as your capacity. We used to go by fish in the ABC, and during the days of concurrency, concurrency is no longer in existence. So available includes the concretable units. Those are the steel units, but they're not flat roof. They've got a gable roof. You can't stack them side by side, but they're classrooms. We count them as capacity. The state doesn't count them as the official fish capacity, but we count them as classrooms. The only classrooms we don't count are the wooden units, because we're trying to remove all wooden units from the district, 100%. That's our goal. So schools with concretable classrooms, the gabled roof classrooms, that's counted in the school's available capacity. So as some of you remember with the Colusa study, the superintendent at the time instructed the committee to look at available capacity as the main capacity component for that particular study. So they're classrooms, they're sturdy steel classrooms. The difference is, you just can't stack them side by side. With the new modular classrooms we have now, the flat roofed, that's part of fish. The state counts the modular classrooms as fish, the flat roof classrooms. So that's the difference between fish and available.
Can I just follow up?
So if you
my
just see
question
fish,
was
that means
why
they don't have available.
My question was, why do you use fish on some of the slides?
That means
and
they don't have
available-
it. That means they don't have available capacity. That means they don't have concretables. So Boca Middle doesn't have concretables. South Grade has concretables. Colusa has concretables. Highland does not have concretables. So if you see available, that means they've got those concretable units.
So we actually did.
In the Colusa instance, there was a big difference between the two, because if you counted just fish, it was like 137%.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So, if it wasn't for those concretables, she wouldn't be able to manage at that level.
So
Just for the benefit for the people that haven't been here, when we talk about available versus fish, just remember that when the school was built, it's for fish capacity. So even though they include concretables, their cafeteria was built for a certain amount, their library was built, and their special rooms. And a lot of the schools wind up using art rooms, music rooms as classrooms. So that was some of the issues we discussed when, even though it's available, what is really beneficial to the students in the school.
Right, and I think
as it grows.
And you're referring to the core capacity.
Correct.
The core capacity. So you have a school like Colusa that was built for a certain size cafeteria, media center, front office, et cetera. Now, in terms of CSR, which is as part of the Florida Constitution, we must, all districts must meet CSR. We've got the classrooms in place to meet CSR. But yes, the core capacity in some of the schools, it's in many cases there's more students than it was originally designed.
Yeah.
CSR is class size reduction, for those of you that don't know. That's the constitutional amendment, class size reduction.
I have a quick question, just so I can understand. So the elementary school my daughter goes to up in Jupiter has villas and portables.
Well, villas might, I think that's just a creative name for the
Okay,
the
that's just what they've
mods.
always called them.
The villas come with a cabana boy.
Yeah, very fancy.
I don't know what that means, if they're wooden or what.
Yeah. No, they're not. That's why they call them the villas. Because you don't want to, back when they were all wooden and they were portables, nobody wanted their child in a portable classroom.
We have both.
So when they bring in the concretables, we call them villas. And we did the same thing in my community.
Okay.
Yeah, like the mods, they can actually be stacked 2 stories. Like Park Vista has a 2-story setup. So, but yeah, it depends on how, each schools, villas, they call them different things, the wooden ones. Now we call them relocatables. They used to be called portables, but we're trying to get rid of those wooden ones. All right, let's move on to high schools. So this is the most crowded school in the district. It's a Forest Hill High at 134%. If you recall, 2 years, I think it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3, I think it was 2. We did a very small boundary change, and I mentioned that was more of a Band-Aid change. So the effects of that change really came in for this year with the full complement. The 11th graders were allowed to stay. They matriculated out. So as you can see, it was a very small increase of only 7 students this year. So that was part of that change. Also really limiting out-of-boundary enrollment as best as possible, assisting the principal with some address verification efforts. So we've at least limited the growth, not having them grow another 100 students. So what's the plan? Right now they do have a classroom addition funded for FY 2020 in the capital plan. So we're looking at adding a large number of classrooms, constructing on the school site. That's number 1. Hopefully that works out. But number 2 is new high school 000, also awaiting DOE approval. That's the new high school that's going to be located in the northwestern quadrant of the Park Vista zone, in between Lake Worth and Lantana roads, just east of Jog Road, just south of Woodlands Middle.
Okay.
Some of you are familiar with that area.
Not
So
east.
What street is
west of Jog Road, I'm sorry, west.
It's on Lions?
Did I say Lions? In between Lake Worth and Lantana and just west of Lions Road, excuse me. One of our proposals here has a jog road involved, so I think got the 2. But yeah, so that's the plan for 000, and that will relieve all those central corridor high schools that most of which are overcrowded.
So Forest Hill does have the funding for the classroom?
Yes.
The additional
That's
classroom?
in the current approved school board district capital plan, approved by the board, but the district capital
Now,
plan.
the classroom, as in one?
Well, we call it classroom addition. It's an addition. Classrooms, plural, many.
What's,
It's just known as a classroom addition,
yeah,
but
but what's
it's
many? Because, and the reason, and I don't just ask that, the reason I ask that is because of the same thing. We go back to that core, because oftentimes they're increasing and the core capacity is not addressed, and the school is still facing a serious issue because of that. Here we have the cafeteria, here we have the media center, here we have that. So exactly what does that mean to the school? Because a few years ago, you couldn't get anyone to attend Forest Hill.
right. I think it depends on the land we can acquire.
Okay.
We're still awaiting that piece. It's the acquisition of the land, as some of you are aware, it's a very tight site. It's very landlocked.
Yes, it is.
So we need to acquire additional land, and then depending on if we can acquire, how much we can acquire, the size, that will then factor into how many classrooms, extra additional classrooms, plural, we can build for that school. And as to any core additions, that will be addressed also, but there is the funding for that. And again, it's just like a Colusa situation. We're keeping an eye on the school annually. Limiting the out-of-boundary enrollment has helped, as some of you are aware. They do have 7 choice programs, so we've vastly limited those students coming in, as well as some other assignments and reassignments. And we are going to assist the principal with address verification efforts this year, which will help as well to try to at least keep that number flat while we plan for the addition and/or 000 pending approval. So we have a plan in place. It's just hoping that the plan comes to fruition quickly.
Thank you.
Jason, just a side question. When the district is getting approval from the state for additional schools, and they're looking at our student count. Are they looking at our student count versus our fish? Our student count versus the number of schools? Our student count versus number of teachers we've hired?
No, it's really capacity. They're looking at capacity. They're looking at our number of kids and capacity district-wide. And they'll look at the excess seats across the county and say, well, you have 30,000 extra seats at the elementary level. Our argument is, but look where they're located. It doesn't meet the needs of where a lot of these pockets of overcrowding occur. I mean, to move children from Boca Raton to West Palm Beach, that's the argument that's just not feasible in our opinion.
So when we're adding to the capacity, we're really hurting ourselves in the long run.
Well, I don't think so, because it's depending, again, with the size of this county. In some areas, it's desperately needed. So, and you've got such an overage in Boca Raton. If we built O5C, it's not really going to change things, because we're going to fill that school, bring those other schools back to. So it's all going to even out. You have Colusa sitting at 130-something% of fish, and Verdi at 120. It will even out. You'll bring Colusa back to 90, 95, and O5C at 90, 95. So it'll even out. I don't think we're going to be gaining those empty seats in that area.
I just meant as a district as a whole in the long run. It's like when we're adding capacity to smaller schools in different areas, that's not helping our situation. Like in Boca, which is, they're on top of each other at every level, elementary, middle, and high.
Maybe the way DOE looks at it, again, it depends on where those seats are needed. When you've got such overcrowding in those areas, they're going to look at that crowding, but they're going to look at those under-enrolled schools and see what the vicinity is. But if we add capacity to those already under-enrolled schools, yeah, I see your point. Yeah, so you won't have a Colusa at 136, you'll have them at 100, and therefore the need won't be as great. But our point is, okay, then what do we keep everything as is and then start shifting kids to points north. That's I don't think that's what the community is looking for. It's not really what we were arguing for.
Or even further west.
It's really a balancing act with DOE and just trying to come off the straight numbers. But you have this many empty seats and this many kids. We're really trying to focus in on a regional approach with DOE, a really regional approach throughout this giant county, which is Palm Beach County. That you can't look at all areas of the county and just treat it the same. You've got crowding in some areas, you have some under-enrolled pockets in other areas, but just the distance, that just would be, just on the transportation, the cost, Shane can speak to that, just the busing would be a massive cost as well. Extracurricular activities, parents picking up from aftercare, just the whole,
it's not feasible for the child or the family.
Especially at the elementary level.
You got it, well said.
It is a balancing act, yes. Balancing the enrollment and the capacity.
Yes, sir.
And I think that excludes perhaps the underlying disagreement that the state may have with us, and that it's not really you have space elsewhere. It's their preference for a different type of school, a charter school, where the approval may be more readily given, unlike in a public school where they're somehow reluctant to do that because they find an excuse where they can to say no.
It's true. Charter schools have much, the leeway is much wider for the charter schools to open. As long as they meet the criteria spelled out in statute and they go through the process. Yeah, it's much easier for a charter school. They don't have to play you're opening in an area where you've got 10,000 excess seats in a 10 that doesn't apply. So yeah, there's a point. It's a valid point. All right, Boca Raton Community High. This is a school that we were looking at a potential boundary change for this coming year. What we decided to do in consultation with the principal, the regional office, was really, and over the years, the many years of hearing false addresses at the school, improper enrollment that occurred at the school. So we figured we were just going to take a very laser-focused effort on address verification, just focus our resources, our efforts a lot of staff power on this school and really try to bring the school down to its more benchmark enrollment. So we started in the spring of 2018 through the summer, really focused address verification effort. The principal ran a full re-registration of all students at the school. We partnered with Boca Raton Middle. They provided addresses where the zone may be in question for rising ninth graders, the current eighth graders, so they communicated the middle school to the high school. So we see firsthand the results. So it was a net decrease of almost 170 students at Boca Raton High this year. That's the first decrease in enrollment in 15 years. So the projection was much higher, and I'm convinced had we not completed these efforts, this wouldn't have occurred. I can almost guarantee you the numbers would have increased again. So first decrease in 15 years. So fish utilization now is below that of SY 16-17. Last year's utilization was 122. 16-17 was 117. Now they're down to 116. So they were projected to be about 126 this year. So this was, I think this was really the results of these efforts showing these numbers. Because they would have been up again. I think we likely would have been showing right in that upper 125, 26% percentile utilization range. So it's also the lowest ninth grade class in 5 years. I think that's also part of the process as well. I think some parents just decided, I'm not going to attempt it. I'm going to just go to my home school. The re-registration and a lot of the other efforts, I think some parents just decided to do what's right and enroll at their home school. So we decided to continue these efforts for the remainder of the school year into next summer. The principal also believes they're going to find more, perhaps even likely lowering that ninth grade class again. So you're going to have these higher numbers matriculating out. We're going to probably be getting more of that benchmark enrollment now based on these efforts. So we're going to continue. We still have hundreds to go through that were flagged utilizing our vendor that we use for these checks. So we're still going through hundreds. So we're going to continue these efforts. Then we're going to continue to limit out-of-boundary enrollment. They have one choice program where we're going to vastly limit those seats and other assignments and reassignments as we did for this year. And then we're going to reevaluate during fall of 2019 and see where we stand and determine if we need to continue that for another year or move forward with a boundary change again if needed. But, out of fairness, this may, you may not have as many areas that need to shift because of this, and you hear parents, how many of these meetings have you heard? Have you checked the addresses? Why are you moving us when you have so many fake addresses? Many times, almost yearly, with schools that have a history of that issue. So, and I think, the efforts are showing in the numbers. So we're working with the school closely, and we're going to continue that process and see where we stand next fall.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Jason, just so I can report back to the folks in Boca, do we feel we're confident that we can maybe not duplicate, but somewhat replicate the efforts we've made, particularly in the next year's ninth grade class, because we'll be able to put that laser focus onto the middle to high school?
I believe we can. Dr. King believes we will as well. So if we continue on, that 116, I did the math, if you used about the same number, now you're somewhere around 112-ish range, which is much better than 126, and it may not be as many areas that we need to move. So the plan was to add capacity to Spanish River, capacity to Olympic Heights, because they've got the space, and then do a domino change. But so we're just going to continue on with these efforts and then see where we stand next fall. And then Jupiter, that's number 3, Crowded High School. They're currently at 114% utilization. There's currently a classroom addition funded in the 2020 capital plan for Jupiter High. So we're looking at that coming next year. We'll continue to limit out-of-boundary enrollment, and I know my staff has also been working on address verification with the school staff there as well. So we'll continue those efforts at Jupiter. Palm Beach Central is at 112. That primary relief, again, is O. That's one of the schools in the Central Corridor. We'll continue to limit out-of-boundary enrollment. And then next, last school over 110 is John L. Leonard at 111. same thing. They're in the central corridor. We're hoping for DOE approval on O for eventual relief. Now, their numbers have come down they were exploding each year, 200 kids a year.
We added something a few years ago.
We added a lot of class. We added modular units to increase their fish, so we at least added the classroom space. But their numbers have come down over the last few years, so it's better than being in the 120s.
If the new high school is built, are we thinking about shifting from Forest Hill to John I. Leonard to Central over? I mean, is that the shift that you see happening? I know we also need to shift from Park Vista up.
I think, that's to be determined at this point. I think a lot depends on what happens with the addition plan for Forest Hill. If that addition at Forest Hill comes through, we may not need a shift, or we may need a much smaller shift. If we can't get that addition worked out, we're going to have to look at large-scale shifts from east to west to relieve all those schools and fill O. But it would be large-scale high school boundary changes.
Okay, we'll let you handle that, Jason. That'll be it. Okay, Nancy.
What is the proposed capacity for the new high school, if you get approval? How big of a school are they planning to build?
I think we're looking at, I don't have the specific.
It's going to have to be, it's going to have to be
We
large.
haven't been building them, the 2,500.
Yeah, you just read my mind. I was going to say right around the 2,500 mark.
Okay, that would have to be.
That's the initial plan. Again, there's flexibility, but right around that in the range of 2,500.
The other concern with Forest Hill is the core that you talked about, but because it is such a tight campus, it's not only those core facilities, it's just moving around the campus.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of those students, it's very crowded when they're changing classes.
Part of the penny sales tax plan is to expand their parking. They also have a dire parking situation there. So
they don't have enough parking for their own teachers.
No,
yeah,
they don't.
And we've got the funding. I think it's for this year is to expand the parking.
And that's what we were looking at to work with the city of West Palm Beach. But I haven't heard that anything's been worked out.
It's still in the works, from what I understand. The funding is there. It's just a matter of acquiring the space to do so. But the parking first is funded, and then we'll move on to the classroom addition. But it's just, they've grown. they've outgrown their space.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Can I ask just a couple quick questions as a new person?
Absolutely.
I know you look at schools that are overcrowded, but is there a threshold for when you're below a certain number where you start worrying about closing a school?
There isn't a threshold. Overcrowding, obviously the concerns are the space, meeting CSR, just...
But if you had a school at like 50% utilization...
We definitely examine that and try to plan to best utilize those under-enrolled schools. Sometimes it's establishing choice programs. A lot of times out of zone choice programs have really helped build schools up Polo Park is an example. They were close to 50 now. They gained a couple hundred kids the last few years. There isn't any threshold though. There isn't any threshold, and we try to best utilize our schools. We prefer not to have schools at 50% or less, but so we'll look at either looking to fill some of those schools in association with a boundary change where we have an overcrowded school adjacent to an under-enrolled school, and we can kind of meet both marks by shifting students to an under-enrolled school. But usually we'll try the choice program route first, adding popular programs that we think parents will enjoy. But what we saw last year, and some of you on the committee experienced that, was our first closing in about, I think, 25 or 30 years with Odyssey, which was continuously at 50% utilization. So it was more repurposed. South Tech is going to take that building, but we closed the high school, a middle school. That was about half full for a number of years.
Okay.
But there isn't any, to answer your question, there isn't a particular threshold. I mean, we try to help those schools as best as possible to grow their enrollment. The variety of methods, usually first being choice programs.
And do you look at some of the magnet schools the same way, like Dreyfus, and because I see that has a high utilization, but we're not talking about it? Or is that just because it's so unique and
it's unique, but
they figure out how many people they can
I think the same, you know, we've established performing arts programs in other schools, and they're widely popular. We did that. Wellington has their own performing arts K to 12 program going from Wellington Elementary to Wellington Landings to Wellington High. Performing arts. So it's almost like it's Western, you know, sort of Bach Dreyfus. I know West Boca Raton High School was struggling with low enrollment. They put in a performing arts program, and their numbers have been going up substantially each year. So performing arts is to the point where they're almost looking at exploring the potential of auditions at the school. So performing arts tends to be very popular in many cases. But you know, our choice department looks at those schools where their current one's located, try not to replicate, you know, too close in vicinity. But you know, we're opening new choice programs each year, give parents those options and more choice.
And we have to constantly make it aware that, because sometimes capacity and choice there's an overlap, and the choice is leadership, and we have to make sure that we give that those decision makings to leadership, so that they will own up and make sure that it happens. And they've done it in some schools, and they've done it very well, and it has paid off. And then in some schools, they haven't been as effective as they should. I'm through.
All right. We're ready to...
Moving right along.
Thank you for your attention during that presentation. All right, we're ready for the next item. That's the Highland and South Grade Elementary Relief. As I alluded to in the slide, Highland is one of our more overcrowded elementary schools in the district. They've been on a growth trajectory, as has South Grade. So we don't have some of those solutions we had in place for those other schools. So you know, those schools don't have out-of-boundary choice programs, which we can vastly reduce. Highland does have a large pre-K program, but that's a very popular program within the community. So it was deemed to.
What was that?
Test. Me? No.
Somebody's touching the mic. I think it might be.
Oh, it might be Roseanne's paper.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't.
So that's where we are with Highland and South Grade. They're 114%, if you recall, with Colusa. Once we hit that 115 mark, we needed to make a change there. And South Grade is even growing at a quicker clip, so they're 108 of available. They're already over their fish, so they're forecast to move beyond the 110 available mark within the next year or two. So we're bringing forward a solution. And as I also mentioned, we've got a couple schools that are adjacent to the zone. We've got Barton Elementary that's about 60% utilized, so it's an under-enrolled elementary school. So there's the opportunity to better utilize the space at Barton Elementary. And then we have Palm Springs Elementary, which is about 84% utilized. So this study attempts to balance enrollment at all of those schools, better utilize the space, and in turn relieving Highland and South Grade. So I'll pull up the study. All right, so this is it's the western portion of Highland Elementary SAC 201. This crosshatch, grab my laser pointer here. So this cross-hatched section is forecast to shift to Palm Springs. So these students are actually all afforded a bus to Highland. So these students actually now, that's a shorter commute. That's about a mile away. And then we unfortunately couldn't move the entire SAC. There's just too many students, about 300 students more that live in the SAC, but about 300 students that attend K-5 that attend Highland. So shifting all 300 would just overcrowd Palm Springs. to the point next year they'd be 103, and then the year after they'd be 108. So it's just too many students. So what we did, we looked for a dividing line, a geographic line, and it almost evenly splits the students. So this is the area. So the area in blue to Palm Springs, that purple to Barton. So this is it's the L11 canal. So that's the dividing line. So you have about 150 students here, and you have about 150 students here. And the SAC, it's mainly canals, the E4 canal, the L10 canal. This is Congress. Palm Springs L is about right here.
That's 10th Avenue going right through it, isn't it?
Yes, correct. 10th Avenue is right, this line. That's 10th Avenue. I think that's the Walmart right there. So
I can't believe there's that many students in that northern part there.
yeah, there is.
Then must all be below
No,
10th.
101 they have less.
It's from the canal to, below
must all
10th is
be
a
in
large,
there.
that's the main
Yeah,
residential
because the
area.
rest
Yes, that's the main
You're getting
residential
up
area.
closer to where I live in Lake Clark Shores.
Yeah, that's the main residential. This is where most of the kids reside in this area. So that's, again, it's there, right now they're about, let's just look at the distance, because I know one of the things that you look at is the distance. Oops.
I think it was a little closer.
Yeah, so here's 201, that's the portion to Palm Springs. Right now, it's a 1.8, and again, I took the measurements from the center of the affected area. So I just picked up an address, center point, and took the measurement, so give or take. So it's about 1.8 miles right now from that area to Highland, and it would be about 0.8 of a mile less to Palm Springs, about a mile. And then the area proposed to move to Barton is 2.3 miles currently to Highland, so it adds less than a mile
Still
drive
pretty
to
far,
Barton. It's
though.
0.7. So they're afforded a bus. They would still have the bus. It just adds less than a mile to Barton. Again, I really wished we could have moved all those kids, but unfortunately, it would just overcrowd Palm Springs immediately. And they wouldn't be able to take this. So we would pretty much put Palm Springs in 2 years in the same situation that South Grade's in right now, moving all of those students.
So this is already a bus zone, correct?
Yes. And Mr. Searchwell can attest.
Yes, yes. We transport those students now.
The entire zone.
Yeah, the entire zone. We transport them.
And then we're looking to do this in coordination. So the South Grade piece in purple, that's SAC 214, and there's Barton in the green color. So there's South Grade and Barton. So SAC 214, and I'll pull up that aerial. So the blue, you can see there's Lake Worth Road, there's I-95, there's 3rd Avenue South. So the line would, the attendance zone would be established at 3rd Avenue South. Right now it's the entire SAC. So we would establish that line and there's a large number of students. We couldn't, too many to move to Barton at once. And plus, we didn't want to under-enroll South. There's a lot of students in the SAC. So you've got, and then the FEC Railroad right here. So we're looking at establishing that zone at 3rd Avenue South. And in terms of the distance, I don't believe it was a substantial. So the South Grade portion, right, so it's about a mile from the center of that area proposed to move. It's about a mile right now to South Grade. It would add 0.3 a mile to Barton, so not much of a
there's still
additional
walkers.
distance. Unless there's a hazardous walk zone that I'm not aware of, but.
They're going to walk to Barton?
Well, the 2 mile is that's the, that's.
No, so they're walkers to South Grade, there'll be bussers to Barton, correct?
Well, it's still within 2 miles.
2 miles.
And again,
So we've been
If they're walking across the railroad track.
Oh, they're going to walk to Barton?
No,
You've got the FEC Railroad you had there.
well, right, right now to get to arrive at South Grade, you have to cross the railroad track. So again, the only way the transportation is provided, and Shane can attest to that, is if there is under the 2 miles, if there's a hazardous walking condition.
That's it.
So,
So they are bused.
If there's a hazardous walking that's designated in that area, we would bus them. If there is not a hazardous walking, then we would.
but they're not bused now.
So the kids within the 2 mile walk zone are not bused now.
So
Barton?
214B, the railroad tracks is not considered hazard, so they're walkers?
214B. No, they're all walkers in that area.
Because they're going now to South Grade, correct?
Yes, to South Grade.
They're all going to South Grade.
Yes.
Which is below the railroad
Right.
tracks.
So they're proposing to go to Barton.
Either way, it's railroad tracks.
No, I'm sorry,
Not-
Jason, can you show the aerial with the railroad tracks again,
Not
please?
to South
They're all
Grade.
walkers now.
The railroad's on the east side.
Yeah, the railroad's on the east side, and Barton is located
Due south.
So right now, they're
will
going
be
over the
west,
railroad.
west of the railroad.
They will be crossing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're all walkers now. We know that for a fact.
But what's the distance?
2.8 to 1.3.
3 miles.
That is in the study. I think right now it's one. So again, from the center of that portion proposed to move, right now it's 1 mile to South Grade. The shift to Barton would be 1.3 miles.
Wow.
And that was the center, so some will be a little closer, some a little further, but I have to use 1 point.
All the walkers.
From the map, Barton looks like it has a huge zone.
It does.
It's
It has
got
a
the
large zone,
park,
yeah.
the park, the college.
The lake.
Yep. It is a large attendance zone.
But it's
But it
only
is,
at
it
61%.
is an under-enrolled school. It has a-
Why is that? Because you know they're not going to want to move their kids there if it's only
My
at
understanding
61%.
is they have a large, a needy population, English as a second language, so they like to keep that school within those lower numbers so they can adequately provide good services. And I don't know if we're at that point of the conversation yet, so I'll let Jason finish because I had some follow-up questions.
And also, most of that is the college and the park right below it. There's nobody living in there, so it looks
Yeah.
really big, but
Right,
there's.
that's
There
why
are-
I was asking.
there.
Yeah, there are swaths that there aren't many students. Yeah, you're correct, Virginia. But,
Well, is 221 the airport? County Air Park, whatever it's called?
No, 232. 221 might be there.
221?
Yes.
The SAC?
Probably,
Yeah.
the Lantana Road right there.
I'd have to
But
double.
isn't it east of Lane?
And John Prince.
John Prince Park, and then right
Right.
north of that, the college.
And then 212 is PBCC.
Right. 11 to 13 would be the junior college. Junior college, is dating me.
So we could take a quick look at the numbers. So right now, this is the without change. And I want to clarify, existing fourth graders entering fifth grade in SY 1920, as we typically propose, and their current K through third grade siblings attending those particular schools, either Barton or South Grade, are not proposed to move. So we allow the fourth graders and their siblings to remain at their current schools. And even when the fourth grader becomes a fifth grade next year, matriculates out, those siblings can finish up at the school. Now, with or without transportation is a board decision. But right now, for next year, the projection is Barton at 60%, and then the next 2 years, Barton at 59 and 58. Highland is projected at 115, 117, 119%. Palm Springs projected at 82, 81, 81, and South Grade, again, using their available capacity, counting those concretables, 109, 113, 117. South Grade came in about 50 students over projection this year. So that was a surprise. That's really why we're here. They've been growing, but they grew more than they anticipated. So that increased their projection trajectory. So the first year was about 100 students from Highland to Barton. 114 Highland. Again, those were the fourth graders. We looked at the fourth graders, anticipated they would remain, and then the second and third year would be larger shift numbers because then you'd have the full complement of K-5. You wouldn't have any of the fourth graders remaining any longer. So with the change, you can see it balances the enrollment. Barton becomes 79%, was 60 up to 79. Highland then decreases to 95, Palm Springs 93, South Grade at 87. Again, 98% of fish, which is a nice fish number, and 87% available. Then the subsequent year, we've got Barton, then you'd have the full complement K-5, 82%. Highland projected at 92, because you'd have more of those fourth graders out, shifting to the new school. Palm Springs at 94, South Grade at 99% of fish, 88% of available, and then the third year, Barton at 83, Highland at 93, Palm Springs at 94, and South Grade at 102 of fish and 90% of available. So you see they're much more balanced in that area. So it's a more balanced utilization. We better utilize Barton. We relieve South Grade, add some enrollment to Palm Springs. I've communicated with all the principals. Communicated with Palm Springs. Are you okay taking additional students? We've confirmed. We've talked to the regional superintendents as we're required to do per policy, because although we're looking at numbers on paper, there's also the academic side. So we needed to make sure adding students to schools didn't have an adverse effect there. So that's and then there's the data. We went over the distance. The feeder pattern doesn't really affect. Highland will still feed 100% to Lake Worth Middle. South Grade will still feed 100% to Lake Worth Middle. It'll just change. Barton was already split. It will just change. There'll be more students feeding from Barton to Lake Worth Middle than currently is. And then for Palm Springs, you'll actually have it'll actually flip the numbers. You'll have more students feeding to Lake Worth Middle than L.C. Swain. And currently, it's more than L.C. Swain by about 10 percentage
And they
points.
all have a capacity, the middle schools.
Lake Worth does, and L.C. Swain's in the 90. I mean, it wouldn't affect the middle school. I mean, it's not impacting those students. Yes, this doesn't affect the middle zone. It's just the feeder pattern.
Right,
It's not affecting
it'll feed more students.
Just from that area, just from Palm Springs, right? We're not moving any more students.
Right, I understand that. I just
Right.
wondered if the middle school had.
It's just where, it's just those students, there's just be more living in the Palm Springs zones that will be zoned to Lake Worth than L.C. Swain. It's still the same number going. And then here's the numbers residing and attending, and what are we looking at? So 201, you can see, and that's this current year. You've got 409 students living in that SAC in total. That's a huge number. And 292, almost 300, attend K-5, attend Highland. So that is a very large number of students. Henceforth, we just, to shift 300 students to Palm Springs. As much as what I would have liked to decrease the distance for all the kids, we're just based on capacity. We weren't able to accomplish that, unfortunately, in this situation. And for South Grade, the reason we couldn't shift the whole SAC, as you can see, 214B, look at the numbers, that's their largest SAC. 417 students reside, 372, almost 90% of the students that live there attend South Grade. So we needed to take a portion of that SAC as well.
And it made sense to move them down to Barton, because
You need
currently,
to
like
speak
you were
more in the
saying,
mic.
as you were indicating, the train tracks is along Dixie. So currently, as it shows, those students do not have to go across the tracks anymore. Right now, they're doing that.
But they are now.
They're now doing it. Now, it's better they're going south down there, so they won't have that hazard as we consider it to deal with.
You have point. Anyway.
Are you
Yes.
finished, Jason?
Yep, and here's the, and we have the 2-mile walk zones attached as well for each of the schools. This is Barton's 2-mile walk zone. So it does, you can see, there's the area, the green is the 2-mile walk zone, so it encompasses the Barton Elementary's 2-mile walk zone. And then we'll look at Palm Springs,
We have a public.
Thailand.
Okay.
There's Palm Springs. So Palm Springs, that area proposed is encompassed in the Palm Springs. That's that purple color. And then
No, for the
It's the s-
Palm Springs, we might have to do transportation for them because if they're going west, they're crossing Congress.
yes.
It's a divided road. We do not want them doing that, so we would be looking at providing transportation.
just wouldn't be as far.
As far.
Yeah,
It
it's
wouldn't
a
be
mile.
as far as a mile, yeah. But that's something that
Before
we
you
would
call, and then I
consider
have a
looking at.
question to clarify this study.
Okay, go ahead.
Before we get to the public audience, a question to clarify the study. When I was looking to see if there was any way to go north, I looked up at Meadow Park and saw that they're like at 114% capacity, and I wondered if we're making these shifts around, have you thought about what you're going to do about Meadow Park?
Yeah, Meadow Park, that's a school, their utilization is really larger than what it is on paper. They have a huge pre-K program. I think it's about 160, 70 pre-K students. A large portion of that are pre-K, or what's the term? Part-time pre-K, excuse me. A lot of part-time pre-K. So, what's that?
Middays, we call it.
Middays, yeah. So you don't have all the students there at the same time, all that 100 and,
So the 114 capacity is not 114?
yeah, so that's just a case where what's on paper, we're counting the pre-K as their utilization, but what's on paper isn't actually they're up there they're in realist, she's probably in the upper 90s because those kids aren't utilizing classrooms during the entire school day because a lot of them are part-time pre-K.
So, but it doesn't create any capacity to move these students north?
No.
Okay.
And I've talked to the principal, it's just the way, that's a program capacity. Now, when we've discussed program capacity, that's more of a program capacity calculation, which I wish we had that for each school. But that's just the fact that she has a large number of part-time pre-K that aren't there, so she can utilize those classrooms at different times of the day and week.
Well, when we don't have capacity at other schools, it's put the district in the position of really having pre-K center schools because they have to go somewhere, even as young as 3. So, for example, if, you're living over in the Colusa area and my child's going to preschool, you get to bus me across town because there's no space. So it's, when these schools are getting over capacity, it's creating preschool center schools, really.
Yeah, and Highland has, I think they've got about somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 pre-K students, and it's a very popular program. Most of the families walk there for that 64. So, that was a part of the discussion. It's a programmatic change with the regional office to move that pre-K, and it was deemed for the benefit of the community and the school that pre-K remain in place. So that's something we explored.
Yeah, because of that is a program decision, and with it being a program decision, it remains in another area, another department. Okay, we do have a public comment. We're okay? We're there. In terms of public comment, Omari Hardy.
Hi, sorry.
Yes, would you, I'm sorry, Jason, where?
Empty
Okay.
microphones here.
Okay, right over here, please.
Thank you.
And this is on Highland Elementary.
And I'd like to welcome Commissioner Hardy. He's a Lake Worth City Commissioner. So welcome to the meeting.
Hello, and I'm also a school district employee. I'm a teacher at Roosevelt Community Middle School.
Oh, okay.
So I am here in my official capacity as a city commissioner in Lake Worth. Actually, my district is Highlands zone. It encompasses much of the zone that you see, pretty much everything that you see east of I-95, and some of what you see west of I-95. Almost everything west of the E4 canal is outside of municipal Lake Worth. Try telling that to the news. Everything is in Lake Worth that's along the Lake Worth corridor. But this is my district, and it affects the people that I serve and the people that I represent in the neighborhood in which I live. And so Highland came onto my radar because of some housing development in the area. Actually, right next door to Highland, they're building 85 units of workforce housing. And it came onto my radar because there were folks that were concerned that this would exacerbate the situation for Highland, which was already overcrowded. As Jason said, it's at 115% of capacity, and they have no concretables on the site. And so they're very, very concerned with 85 additional families there, that things would get worse for Highland. And Highland has worked really hard to improve itself over time. And that's how it got onto my radar. Additionally, the principal, Ms. Villani, and I were at a groundbreaking today, 2 blocks south of Highland, of another 14 units of affordable housing. And so you're going to be looking at almost 100 extra units of housing coming online there within the next probably 12 to 18 months. And it's going to affect the school probably in a negative way if the boundary is not addressed. And so just a few things. As the principal has told me, they have about 4 rooms right now that hold 2 classes each. And in these rooms, the classes are separated by basically a column and a curtain. And I've been in this room, and I've also had the benefit of being 8 and 9 and 10. And I can't really imagine what it would be like to be in a room where basically someone's holding class simultaneously on the other side of me. That would obviously affect my learning. It's obviously not in the best interest of the children. And the school is working really hard to do everything that they can, but they certainly need relief. And, the other thing is what is really important to me is there's a connection now, and I'm hoping that this committee can dispel this connection. There's a connection now between housing for people and the quality of our schools, right? And there are people who, when housing gets built in Lake Worth, which we desperately need housing of all types, they're beginning to associate more housing with worse schools, more housing with overcrowded schools. And look, we live in Florida. We're getting 1,000 people a day. I wish I could say that they were moving to Liberty County or DeSoto County or some other county, but they're moving to South Florida. They're moving to the I-4 corridor. They're moving to Duval County. And we need to build housing here so that housing can be affordable for people of every stripe. And I think this is a huge opportunity for you guys to do something positive for the kids at Highland and for the people who live in the city, and to make it a little easier for us to accept what should be positive changes to our city. So I hope that you address this issue. It would do a world of benefit. And I love the fact, Jason, that the kids who are being moved, we obviously don't want kids to be moved in a perfect world, but the kids who are being moved are kids, first of all, that they're being moved to a closer school in some cases. And, these are kids who, some of them are already being bused. And if the idea is that, we just bus them in the other direction to a school that's even closer to them, to a school that's demographically similar and that's also in their community, it's, I think, a win-win situation for everyone involved. So thank you. I've used up my time. I appreciate it.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to take a privilege here. You've seen the study.
Yes, ma'am.
And in your capacity, certainly it's wonderful that you've taken the time to come and speak to us. We do go out to the community. If we approve a study, it's not the final approval of our committee.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I have discussed this at length with Jason.
We go out.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we come back. So my question to you is,
yes, ma'am,
where do you stand on this study that is being proposed to us right now?
I support it.
Okay.
And I believe that my residents would support it.
So you'll be at the community input meeting to make those statements?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I will be there, and I will bring as many residents as I can that support exactly this. And discussing it with my residents is exactly what I hoped that Mr. Link would propose. It's exactly what we see here, and it's something that I think the city of Lake Worth can get behind and our residents can get behind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just checking.
Thanks for checking.
Can I just?
Yes, certainly.
Starting to sweat there.
There were no other public comment cards.
I just want to follow up with a couple of questions, and I think I heard you say something that may answer them. So you're saying that SAC 201, because it crosses Congress, they will not be walkers to Palm Springs?
Right. Ideally, we don't want to have them crossing a divided roadway
Okay.
of this type.
Because that was, I thought, well, if we're going to make them walkers, that is something we always like to do. And although Jason said a capacity was an issue, a huge issue, is that not what I heard you say? You could not possibly put both those SACs in?
No, I actually ran the numbers.
300, I think
Yeah, here's the, if we move the entire SAC, so 1920, Palm Springs, instead of the current study showing 93, if we move the whole SAC, they would become 103. Barton would go from 79 to 72. 2021, Palm Springs would go, current studies at 94, they'd go to 108%. It's Palm Springs. Barton would go from 82 to 73. And then SY 21-22, Palm Springs, the current study would have them at 94. And then Palm Springs would, that moving off the entire SAC would be at 108%, again, very overcrowded, and Barton would be from 83 to 73.
Okay.
So that's what it would do.
Are they currently walkers to Highland?
Yes, some
right?
of these students
Okay,
would be,
so then
yes.
they'll be on a bus.
On a bus.
Well, no, I think she's asking these, I think these students, I don't think they're currently walking. Do these students currently walk? I think they're offered a bus.
All transported. Those
That's
are
what she's
Oh, they're
asking.
also, they'll remain on a bus?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what she's asking.
Okay, I got it. They're
And
all
then
transported.
the other is about Barton. So you're giving that school 276 more students with those two SACs?
I think that's in the first, yes.
101, 175
Yes.
in the first year.
Yes.
So have you, my understanding is that Barton is a struggling school. They have a language population that's a struggling school. Have you talked with the principal, and what is her reception to getting so many more students at her school? Even though her capacity is low, we all know that sometimes the capacity is low to provide a better service.
I did. I actually spoke with the principal. I spoke with the regional superintendent as well, Dr. Salzman. Barton did improve their grade this year, so they are on an improvement track. I know grade isn't one of the criteria, but they did, it's out there, it's public record. I mean, people know school grade. They did improve, but the initial proposal actually had not shifting as many students to Palm Springs, was being, I saw that space at Barton was shifting most of that northwestern SAC 201 of Highland to Barton. And then after talking to, exactly as you mentioned, I speak to the regional superintendents, to the principals to garner their opinions, especially on the academic side, because often what's on paper may not be academically. And it was at the recommendation of those conversations that we don't place that many students at Barton at once, because I think about the third year would have been close to 500 students at Barton. So we ended up shifting more to Palm Springs, conversation with the Palm Springs principal, the instructional superintendent, and that was deemed the better fit for Barton.
Okay, I want to just make sure, we have nothing to do with it, but that they get the
Yeah,
support
absolutely.
they need with almost 300 more students.
I wouldn't do that without having the conversations
And I know we
with
don't
the school
do that.
leaders and the
And
regional.
my next question is I-95 considered a dangerous hazard? Well, obviously there'll be bus to Barton, correct?
From 214?
214B.
No, 214B, they are within the walk zone for Barton.
Okay, so I-95 is not considered.
They're all east of 95,
east
so they're
of
not
95.
crossing
Okay,
95,
gotcha.
and they would remain.
This will be bust. No, Barton's over
Okay,
there. The name is in an
the name's in the
awkward
wrong place.
The
My-
names,
my
it's in the
mistake.
green, it's just it's not next to the student
Okay.
point. I'll
That
have a talk
confused
with our
me,
map
too.
maker.
Okay, that was it. And just as a follow-up to our wonderful speaker, I appreciate you. We run into this, we build them, and then we got to find schools to send them to. So it's an ongoing issue in all parts of the county as the people continue to arrive.
Okay, Virginia?
Can you tell me how many students are in 210D? It's that really western part of Barton.
210D, well, sure, that's in the study. That's where we now provide the number of students. So let's look. Right here, just vanished. There it is.
I saw it too.
So there's 138 K-5 students residing in that SAC.
Wow.
And of that, about 67% choose to attend Barton, so 90 to attend Barton.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I don't know that now.
Okay,
That's
yes.
closer to this way.
All right, folks, where are we? I'm looking for a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move that we take this study to the community.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
By Frank, seconded by Virginia and Nellie. Okay. To take study SH1 to the community. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion, would you please raise your hand?
Aye.
Okay. That is a motion to take this study to the community. And we'll let Mr. Hardy be the first speaker.
As a courtesy, of course.
Yeah, I'll wear my armor.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I know this is early, but we have a running rule of our time.
yes.
And so are we going to be able to finish this second study within the 25 minutes that we have?
I would yield to Jason. Jason, do you anticipate this being lengthy?
No, I don't. This one, there aren't any students residing in the area. It's just to consolidate a future development that's currently under construction, that's split. I'll briefly discuss it, but I think we can.
Do we have any comment cards on this one? No, so we have no public comment cards.
Behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. Well, no, you can. No problem,
Fill
sir.
one out.
After his presentation, you'll be taking it. Okay? That's fine. Okay, Jason, you're on.
Okay. So what we have here is the ABC has a history of I guess in the last few years of being brought before them as more of a proactive boundary change before any students reside in those particular future developments. So this is a situation, you have a new development that's currently under construction. There are no students there currently, so this wouldn't affect any current students. It would affect future students, likely the first ones anticipated for next school year. It's called Solsera. It's a development just south of Southern Boulevard, and the development is actually intersected by Jog Road. So same development intersected by a major road. And you know, we try, and it's listed in policy as one of those secondary criteria, not to split developments. So this is a case where we have opportunity to shift the areas into a singular elementary, middle, and high school zones. Now, the middle is the same for both regardless. It's Okie-Healy. So for the high school and elementary school is where the difference was. And, oh, that's coming up big. So here's the site plan that was provided. There's Southern Boulevard and Jog Road. That's what it's about 100 homes. I think a little over 100. A little over 100 homes. So this area, SAC 160A, is currently zoned to Melaleuca, Okie-Healy, John I. Leonard. The western portion is SAC 159, zoned to Pine Jog Elementary, Okie-Healy, and Palm Beach Central. So the thought is to consolidate this entire development, so all the kids living in the development will attend one school. So what do we look at? We look at, as required, we look at capacity. Melaleuca Elementary, I think it's in the study, but they're around in the low 70s, 70% utilized, 72% utilized. Pine Jog is in the low 90s. They've actually been a bit higher, but we've reduced their choice seats to reduce their enrollment. They were pushing 100. And John I. Leonard is currently at 111%. Palm Beach Central is at 112%. But there is more. There's currently a large apartment complex being constructed in the central zone, and there's more future development applications especially of the single family type in the central zone. So the thought process on this, well, we've got more space at Melaleuca, we've got more anticipated space at Leonard, let's shift the entire future development to Melaleuca, Okie, and John I. Leonard. Middle school will be the same. So that's what the proposal does before any student lives in the development. We consolidate that new development so that the entire development is zoned to one elementary, middle, and high school.
Is that a gated community?
I don't know if it's going to be gated. It will be, okay.
It will be.
There'll be entrances off both, there's the entrances, you can see, there'll be entrances off both sides of Jog Road. The developer actually brought this to our attention, asking, hey, our development's split, is there any way we can consolidate? And I said, well, let's take a look at it, and yeah, it was split, and we tried to avoid that, and this was an opportunity before students move in to proactively consolidate the development. So let's look at the study. And there isn't a large impact. I mean, there aren't. It's a little over 100 homes. Aren't a lot of students that are going to be. You know, it's not like on the scale of an Alton or an Arden or Westlake or that scale. You know, we're talking thousands. But you can see Melaleuca is currently at 71% utilization and Pine Jog's at 94%. And you look at the projection, Melaleuca at 72%. At 70, Pine Jog at 96 and 97. So you have a school close to 100, and you have a school that has plenty of seats to take additional students. And the same with Leonard and Central. Projections at 111, 114, 112, and 13, and then 113 and 115. And, you know, we're not. So next, and there would be the same law for the next 3 years, I believe, 113. I mean, it's just a very small number of students as they eventually start to move in and you know, students are generated. So, but we looked at this on a capacity side primarily, and that's why the decision was made. You look at the distances. Not much of a difference. Pine Jog. So it's 1.1, so that area, it would be actually 0.1 of a mile less to Melaleuca. And then for the high school, it's 3.8, almost 4, and it would add an additional mile to the high school regardless. You know, there would be afforded transportation regardless. High school zones tend to be larger. That's where we are in terms of distance. And we've got the feeder pattern, also keeps a clean feeder pattern. Melaleuca is 40, well, actually, we're just looking at that select area. So Melaleuca currently feeds 45% to Okeechobee. It's split between Okeechobee and Palm Springs. But that particular area would then all shift together to Okeechobee, and then all together from Okeechobee to Leonard 100%. That would be the entire development if it shifts. Where you've got Pine Jog currently split between Okeechobee and Palm Springs, and then split at Leonard and Central. So it's a clean feeder there. They'd all be elementary 100% to the same middle, and then 100% to the same high. And then we've got the 2-mile walk zone. So happy to answer. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
we've got public.
Yeah, we have a public comment card. Mr. Gregory P., could you please tell us your name and?
Yeah, it's Greg Pettibon.
I'm sorry. It's. Maybe someone.
No idea.
You can, okay.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Pettibon. I'm with Mattamy Homes. We are the builder-developer for the Solsera project in question. I'd like to take a moment just to let everyone know how much we appreciate the efforts of staff on our behalf with bringing this forward. Also their dialogue and engagement to date, as well as your time this evening. When we got into the project, we realized it was bifurcated, not only by Jog Road geographically, but it was also bifurcated by schools. So ideally, we'd like to consolidate it. It makes for a better situation in the community, makes for an easier time for our buyers and the end users here. We understand there are tremendous constraints that this board and this district face with school capacity and also with arranging for the educations of our children. We do, again, fully understanding the capacity constraints, I do believe we have a slight disagreement with the high school, and understandably, we do understand that there are some capacity issues that are somewhat similar in the high schools, the two options, but I do think that our preference, if preference can be brought into bear, would be to go to, I believe it's Central Palm Beach, and also to Pine Jog. And I know that you guys have to digest this, a lot of different variables to it, but if preference does weigh into the equation, I did want to put that forward. Thank you all very, very much.
Okay, it's the feeder pattern.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's okay, thank you, sir. So we're dealing with the feeder pattern, a discussion on that.
Is this community going to be walled? Mr. Petty? Mr. Pettibon, is there going to be a wall around this city, or is it going to be integrated with the current communities?
Yes, ma'am. There will be on the south side, it was a settlement stipulation. There will be a chain link fence, but the balance of the community will not be walled. There will be landscape berms and hedges, and then from a vehicular standpoint, it will be gated.
The only reason I ask is because when I lived in Boynton Beach on Northeast 8th Avenue, Northeast 7th Avenue went to Atlantic. This was before Boynton Beach High School was built. And Northeast 8th Avenue went to Santa Lucius. So the elementary school, they let us choose because we could go to Galaxy, Forest Park. It was kind of crazy back in the 90s. And I actually know what it's like to have your neighbor go to one school and you go to a different school when parents do the carpool situation. So that was the only reason that I asked that question, because even though Jog Road splits it down the middle, it does sometimes cause concern for families.
And I'll step down for your discussion, but please, if you have any further questions, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
In looking at it from a transportation perspective, when we have Jog Road splitting the development, it always concerns us because the students on the left-hand side of the block will have to cross Jog to go to Melaleuca. And they're within the walk zone, so technically we're not required to provide transportation for them. But seeing that they're elementary school kids, it's just a tough situation to say we expect them to cross Jog Road. And are the parents going to be willing to drive them over there, or will they be requesting that we make that a hazardous transportation and transport those students? I don't know how we're going to...
So that's going to be a possibility.
It's something that we certainly have to look into.
Well, especially, I'm familiar with the location of this, and that's also an entry to Southern Boulevard, and it is extremely busy road.
See where I'm talking about.
Yes, so I wouldn't want my children to be crossing
The same
that
thing
road.
would happen, though, if they went to Pine Jog. They still have to cross.
Yeah,
Either way,
They're crossing regardless.
regardless.
What's the next
They're
option?
both located east of Jog Road.
Right.
So even now, to get to Pine Jog, those kids would still have to cross
Yeah.
Jog. So I
Just
think you'd be
looking-
in the same I think we'd be in the same transportation situation.
It's just, I see it as I'm sure you can see where I'm concerned with it, because
Yeah, I just, it's just the location of these two schools. They're both east of
Both there.
Jog, and you just have the development split at Jog, so it's,
But they would be walking to Choley Lake?
I think so. But then it buys into the argument where now you have the one development splits into two schools, and
right.
carpooling becomes a problem. It's just,
And it doesn't appear that there's an entrance on the west side. They'd still have to go out the east side and come on down Jog to walk.
And these students would have to cross to get to Choley Lake.
Right, they would have
They're
to still
gonna
cross Jog.
If you wanted to keep them together.
Right.
Yeah, and then Choley Lake's a little further, and Choley Lake isn't in the zone. I'd have to start changing the zone up.
Yeah.
It's either.
I think because the builder's building it as one development instead of using Jog Road to say, well, this is this and this is that.
That's
I
curious.
am a little more in favor of, sending them to the same school. It's, you're buying into and you know me, I'm not the developer-friendly person, but it's a future thing. So when they buy, they know they're going to the same school. They're not going to say, oh, you live, what's it called,
Which
Solera?
side, west side, east side?
Solsera.
Solsera, oh, are you west or east? And then you become a little bit of a separate, so I could support
Well, that's
it.
sensible. The developer bought the land knowing there was a major thoroughfare down the center. And this PUD looks like it was designed in May. We're hearing about this in November. Certainly they knew long before they bought it, well before they platted it.
I agree.
So the capacity of the development is defined in, on the sheet here. The future development.
What were the total number of homes? What, Greg? 106? Sorry, this, just for the clarification.
The total unit count is 109 single-family homes.
Okay, 109.
They're roughly about 50-50.
Okay.
Between the two sides.
Thank you. So 109.
Okay.
That's not going to generate it. I mean, the generation rate isn't 100 homes isn't going to generate
Okay.
a lot of students.
Virginia?
I had a similar thought as down the road here. He knew right away that they were separated. They're separated for all other reasons because of Jog Road, but I have no problem keeping them together. But we should acknowledge that you knew that when you bought it. But where I do differ with your request to change to Pine Jog and Central High School, I do believe you should be staying, the school should be staying at Melaleuca and John I. Leonard. That's my feeling.
Well, it's just an even flow.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to move the study forward. I know there won't be community input because or do we still go out and?
There's
How do
I
we address?
second that.
Perhaps we can combine this with the community input meeting
What?
for the Highland South grade.
Okay.
Perhaps we can combine the two, if that's sufficient. There isn't anything policy that says we can't. I guess I can listen to the ABC and.
That sounds
There's
like
no
a good
community.
idea.
That's what I was going, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No.
It would either be at the
Who are we going to present it to?
Yeah.
Right.
The developer's
If
here, I
nobody
think he is
lives
the
there.
community.
developer, right? I mean, the developer that's.
Well, I don't know that we've ever, we just move it forward
To a community.
to a community or, we go through the same process as always.
Right, it's just
If
where
no
we
one
hold the
comes, no
community
one
input
It's just where we
meeting.
hold the meeting.
Where we hold the meeting.
Whatever is in the best, Jason feels is the best interest to hold the meeting,
Let's do it the sales.
so we can have them simultaneously, he's thinking with the prior one.
I mean, I don't think it would make sense to set up a meeting at Palm Beach Central for
No.
this,
Right.
but we could either combine it with the community input meeting for South Grade in Lake Worth, or the other alternative is holding a community input meeting in the boardroom.
We have a study. I would offer this as a suggestion to you. If there's no community to advance it to, who do we take it out to? We haven't done this previously, but there is a discussion about how to move this study forward, and the points are so far, and it appears that in another ABC meeting, we need to make a decision. Are we going to do a Pine Jog versus a Melaleuca? There seems to be that type of those types of points. But
I think we did take it out because when we discussed,
Palm Meadows was one, with Sunset Palms
Wasn't
one.
Westlake
Westlake
also?
was also a future, so we.
But
With
we
nobody
didn't
in it?
combine it with another.
no, I
No.
mean, that's up to Jason, he can set the meeting.
I'll go by, what the ABC
Okay.
feels is
Yes,
the
sir.
best interest of the.
I believe the developer's representative has some.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Yeah.
before that, I'd like to move that we extend the meeting for an additional 5 minutes.
Okay, there's a motion to
Second.
extend for 5 minutes. Virginia, was that?
Second.
Virginia, seconds. All in favor, so we're talking about 8:35. All in favor of that, would you please raise your hand?
Can you do
Opposed?
this for village council?
All right.
Thank you all very much, once again. I live in a world of compromise, and I think we all do. Perhaps hearing the concerns and myself not being a parent yet, a very valid concern was raised respective of elementary school, and that was it being bifurcated by a heavily traveled road. I would put forward that perhaps we keep the elementary distribution as it currently is. We would ask for consolidation for the high school. Again, that's the preference being to, I believe it was Central Palm Beach. I believe they were right at the same,
The high
right at the
schools.
same capacities. Yes, sir.
Close, yes, more so than the elementary school.
So perhaps that's a compromise, that elementaries are kept bifurcated from a traffic perspective, safety perspective, and perhaps on the elementary or the high school side, it's a Palm Beach Central option would be preferred.
I'm not in favor of that.
Well,
I didn't completely understand what he,
I think he's saying keep the way it would be normally without making any
trying to
changes
get to
except for
For
the high
the
school.
elementary.
Yeah.
so normally it would, okay.
well, the
The,
kids
uh,
still have to go cross jog
cross
to
jog.
reach Pine Jog, so we're still going to be in that situation.
I have a question about just the overall rationale, because,
Yeah.
you know, other than by name, these seem like really
It's
two
on the table.
separate locations. I mean, they're on very different sides of the road. So
That's,
what is the problem with just keeping it the way it would be, even though you'd have like an east and a west? I mean, I know it's not your preference for probably sales reasons. You want to be able to say, if you move into our community, this is where you're going, but what's wrong with just keeping it? I mean, that's a big road. It might as well be two separate developments.
that's,
I don't know that people are going to carpool going from one side to the other necessarily.
Therein lies why you have the study that's before you.
I just don't hear anybody proposing that be an option.
That's the study that has been brought forward to the committee.
By
So
default,
exactly
that's
what you
the-
see.
By default, that's the rule, and
Yeah.
the study is going to potentially consolidate them, right? That's
Right.
the idea.
I'm talking about not
And that
consolidating.
motion's on the floor, was moved and seconded to take this
There's
study
still the
out.
motion on the table.
Yeah,
And we were-
just to take this out.
right, and we were approached by the developer, letting them, we
Right.
have a new development, it's split. Can you align them into the same zones? We, you know, it wasn't we didn't get into the conversation of which zones. It was so, okay, we'll check it out based on the criteria in policy, and we'll attempt to do that, and it's a
Staff is
split.
just suggesting that we combine it with the study, the discussion with the study that we're already taking out.
But we haven't voted to take this one out.
No,
No, it's on.
we haven't. That's where we are.
That's what we're discussing, this study.
And it's all right to close debate,
Move to close debate.
okay?
Seconded,
There's a motion to close debate.
second.
Okay. All in favor of closing
Two-thirds.
debate on the motion to take this study out, just to take it out now. That's the only motion now. Didn't say anything else, to take it out. All in favor, would you please raise your hand?
To take it out into the community.
Take it out to the community.
Yeah, we're closing debate.
Closing debate, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You're closing debate, I apologize.
I vote in favor of closing debate.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Now that we've closed debate, the motion before you is to take this study out to the community. All in favor of taking this study out to the community?
To the community.
To the community.
I'm sorry, I'm slightly confused. I don't know what that means, since, does that mean that
We'll
we're going to
have
go
figure that
to,
out.
we're going to go to John I. Leonard
We're going to,
and Malaluka Elementary?
Yeah, the study.
We're going to go, well, I understand what a study
I
is.
think
certainly.
I think Jason said he was gonna have
Jason has made a decision, Jason has made a suggestion that we are either going to have to say yea or nay to. But that is a suggestion. It is not an action at this particular time.
The action is on taking this study out. That's the
I
action.
don't know what that means.
Yeah, because there is no community.
I have a hard time voting on that because
There is no
because it is
community.
divided by a really large road, and my concern about your next-door neighbor going to a different school than you go to, being divided by Jog Road is not my next-door neighbor. I was concerned about the all yellow and the crosshatch in purple, as opposed to the crosshatch and purple going to two different schools. And so that's what my concern was. I would be more inclined, if we were just going to make a decision, unless it makes a big impact on the schools, because I am definitely proactive.
Then you're
Madam
voting
Chair?
against
You're
taking
voting
this
no.
out.
Well,
Madam Chair?
I'm not voting. That's my question. I'm afraid to vote because I don't understand what that means to take out a
You
study.
have to vote. Either we're taking this one
I
out, or
was
you're
just
saying
going
no.
to say,
don't take it out.
we made a motion, it was approved to end debate.
So,
I
right.
know, I'm
And
sorry.
so it is strictly
Yes or
just
no?
I think the
a
question is,
up of voting down of the motion. And I understand, it is confusing,
And we
but
can bring back
that's where
another
we are.
study after we
Yeah.
take it out.
Right.
So,
Yes, I understand.
Okay, all right, the motion before you is to take this study, M-1, out to the community. All in favor of that motion, please raise your hand.
I don't understand it either.
Opposed to that motion,
Opposed.
please raise your hand.
Can you just hold them a little bit longer? Okay.
Can I pull the amendment, or can I pull the action?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, what is the vote?
I have,
it's now up to the district. It's now up to us.
We also need to vote on the high school piece, because if it's a boundary change, it's a boundary change to the elementary and the high, so we need to vote on J1 as well.
Oh, jeez, now we really don't have time. I thought we were doing
Because this
that
is
as a
changing
package.
boundaries for elementary and high.
My motion meant to be the whole.
Okay, so instead of M1, it was M1 and J1.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that the intent of the chair?
That's the intent.
Okay.
Yes, what is the vote?
5 in favor and 3 not in favor.
All right, so the motion passes that this study, M1, and the maker of the motion has said that we are taking M1 and J1 out for community input. Please, committee, say what does that mean?
May I ask what that means, Madam Chair?
It means that this study is going to go out for discussion to the community. Now the issue is what community?
The developer.
And do we do them as a merged group in one hearing?
Jason, you had a suggestion.
Well, it's either we combine that with the meeting to be held in Lake Worth, Highland South Grade
Why not?
meeting, being there aren't any families or students residing in that community yet, or we would have to hold a separate meeting in another, either here in the boardroom or at a
My
school.
understanding
I
is
don't think it makes
Roberts
sense.
allows for the chair to make a motion. Is that, am I correct? The new
Madam Chair.
Roberts, may I would move that we would take these studies out for community input in concert with the previous study, so that there can be community input, and therefore the process can be continued.
Second.
Now, you can discuss.
Madam Chair, looking at the areas that we're talking about, would it be feasible to actually have the meeting to open it up to the community here at the district, which is closer to that development, and those schools if they choose to come? It may be parents that are thinking of moving in there, or parents that don't want that community going to, I mean, I don't know. I don't live in that direct area.
We would follow the same protocol that we follow all the time in reference to notifying a community. Is that not correct?
Yes, and the only community member we would notify would be the developer at this point.
Would you notify the SACs of the schools affected? Do we?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Oh,
And the developer's here
Yes,
now.
Right.
correct.
Okay.
Okay? So there would be an opportunity again to speak.
Understood?
Is that, okay, the motion is before you. All in favor of that motion, would you please raise your hand? Oppose?
Confused.
Yeah.
All, please.
Can you please raise your hand again for in favor of that motion? Because it wasn't, I can't see.
Oh, sorry.
We're joining all the studies into one.
One meeting.
One meeting, not one study.
Carla,
Nellie's got it.
Kathy. Okay, no. Okay.
Oppose?
Madam Chair,
Oh, just
one.
apparently
No.
10 minutes wasn't enough time.
We have 1 minute left.
1 minute.
okay.
Other business.
We have other business?
What other how much other business do you have?
Just this scheduling
Okay,
of the
the
next
motion,
meeting.
please give me the count.
6 in favor, 1 opposed. 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Is that everyone voting?
No.
Give me a count of the number
I
of
have
persons.
Virginia in favor, Roseanne in favor, Carla in favor, Kathy in favor, Nellie in favor, Frank in favor,
Nancy and
Nancy in favor. Okay, that's what I'm missing. I'm sorry.
7 and 1.
And then, so 7 to 1. And I have Andy.
5, 6.
Who's 8?
That's got to be more.
No, I have.
I did put my hand up.
Oh,
It's this whole
We have
side.
10 we have 10 members
Cynthia.
present, so.
I didn't get Cynthia, I'm sorry.
It's everybody but
One, two.
Andy. How about that?
This is good.
Okay.
Always, okay. All right, okay, Frank, what are you done? Tell me.
I move for adjournment, Madam Chair.
The only thing that needs, okay, there's a motion to adjourn, that's privilege. All in favor of the adjournment?
Oh, we have one more thing, next meeting,
You've got an agenda item.
scheduling the next meeting.
Next, schedule the next meeting, can we,
Let me just throw up the calendar.
Can we just do the scheduling of the next meeting? That's the only
That's
thing we
it.
have.
Yes.
That's it, I promise.
And you'll be told about the community input.
So, we are December, let me pull my calendar.
Depends when you can pull this community thing together.
What's that?
We can't pick a meeting date if we haven't had our community meeting.
That's it, right?
Well, this would be for the community input meeting.
Oh,
And,
Okay.
well, we would try to combine, as we did last
Oh,
year, to
okay.
combine the community input
Then-
meeting with the
okay.
regular ABC meeting at a school site.
Yeah, then.
To, try to combine the process and, so what we have available is, we've got Tuesday, the first Tuesday, the 4th, or we've got, I know we have folks that can't do the 2nd. We typically don't do Mondays, but we've got the 10th open, we've got the 10th, the 4th. I unfortunately can't make it on the 6th or the 17th. How about the 4th, 10th,
I can't do the 10th.
or,
Could you?
18th?
Could you
Can't do the 4th.
email, could you poll us by email?
okay,
Give us about 3 or 4 dates, about 3
okay,
dates.
we'll do that.
And a location.
Yeah, we'll solidify that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Give us
Yeah, we-
about 3 dates.
we'll do that. All right, so we'll send
Is that
you some
okay?
dates and poll the members.
And I'm leaving town on the 20th.
All right, as soon as possible, so we can get this wonderful
adjourned.
thing behind us. Thank you so much, everyone. It's wonderful seeing you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Hayden has said, we are adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.